never imagined a spilled latte could ruin or rather, rewrite me entire week. But there he was, crouched by the mess, grinning like the universe owed him something I clearly didn't. "Oops," he said, tilting his head. "Looks like I owe you a drink. Or maybe your number." I blinked, twice, then let out a nervous laugh. "Very funny. I'm not here for your jokes." His smile didn't falter. It only widened, like he had all the time in the world to tease me, and I was exactly where he wanted me to be. There was something disarming about him, something dangerously soft hiding beneath that confident, messy-haired barista charm. His name tag read, Eli Donovan. I hated how quickly my chest betrayed me when he spoke. My own life was complicated enough. I didn't need a flirtatious stranger making my pulse spike in a crowded coffee shop. And yet, within 10 minutes, we had concocted an absurd arrangement. I needed a +1 for my sister's engagement party, and Eli, grinning like a mischievous demon, offered to pretend to be my boyfriend. Just for one night. The absurdity of it made me laugh. But I didn't know how close to the truth Eli's eyes would get when they lingered on mine. The night of the party arrived with a hesitant winter chill. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, straightening my jacket, and felt the familiar knot of social anxiety tighten in my stomach. The doorbell rang, and in came Eli, messy hair now tamed just enough to look dangerously attractive, dark brown eyes catching the low golden light. He carried himself as if he belonged anywhere he chose, as if charm were a shield that could deflect any judgment. "Ready?" he asked, voice smooth but tinged with something that made my stomach flutter. I nodded, feeling absurdly aware of his proximity as we left the apartment. The taxi ride was quiet, but the silence between us was anything but empty. Every laugh at a passing joke, every accidental brush of our arms sent sparks I couldn't ignore. The night felt charged, and I hated how much I liked it. At the party, we were the perfect faux couple. Eli held my hand as we entered, whispered compliments that made me blush, and even fended off nosy relatives with playful ease. But the closer we were, the more dangerous it became. Because pretending to love someone is easy, pretending you don't is the hardest part. By the end of the night, the lines between fiction and reality blurred. I found myself leaning against him in the corner of the balcony, city lights shimmering behind us, our shoulders touching, fingers brushing. My heart betrayed me entirely. Eli's eyes caught mine, unguarded for the first time. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked, voice low, almost hesitant. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell him this was just an arrangement, nothing more. But my pulse had other ideas. I nodded before I could stop myself, and his grin softened into something dangerously intimate. The ride back was quieter, but closer. I caught him watching me in the reflection of the cab window. He reached for my hand, casual at first, but lingering in a way that melted my defenses. "I shouldn't," he whispered, almost to himself. "This wasn't supposed to happen. Neither of us signed up for this," I admitted, trying to sound firm, though the warmth of his hand on mine made my words hollow. But Eli had a way of holding space, of staying dangerously near without tipping over into recklessness. He wasn't just pretending anymore, his fingers intertwined with mine as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My chest tightened, lungs too small for the electricity between us. I had never wanted someone like this. I had never wanted to let someone in so completely, so suddenly, and yet, here he was, making the impossible feel inevitable. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of stolen glances, lingering touches, and messages that hinted at more than friendship. Eli was everywhere in my mind, in the coffee shop where he worked, in the small moments of my day when I expected nothing and found everything. One afternoon, I found myself wandering the streets near his cafe, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and longing. He spotted me instantly, a smile spreading across his face that could disarm armies. "Lost?" he teased. "Maybe," I admitted, and it was true. Lost in more than directions, lost in the sudden gravity that seemed to orbit around him. He leaned close, hand brushing against mine, the heat between us undeniable. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought this would go beyond that party, but it did." I swallowed hard, feeling the fragile threads of my control slip. Me neither. And yet, with him, the world didn't feel like a trap. It felt expansive, like possibility. Like maybe, just maybe, pretending could lead somewhere real. Eli and I navigated the delicate dance of newfound feelings, messy, exhilarating, and terrifying. There were moments when doubt clawed at my chest, when his playful teasing felt like a test I wasn't sure I could pass. But he never let go on it when I hesitated. Not when I pulled away. Not when the fear of vulnerability threatened to undo me. One night, we found ourselves on the rooftop of his apartment building, city lights sparkling beneath us. He took my hand, gaze unwavering. "I didn't plan for this," he confessed. "But I'm not letting go." And for the first time, I didn't resist. The cold wind whipped around us, but in his arms, I felt warm, tethered, and astonishingly safe. "I guess neither of us can pretend anymore," I murmured, leaning into him. He laughed softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. "Good," he said, "because I don't want to." The transition from pretend to real was neither instant nor simple. It took late-night conversations, small confessions, and the quiet reassurance of holding each other through sleepless nights. But slowly, the arrangement that began as a casual favor transformed into something neither of us could have anticipated. I learned his fears, his dreams, the little quirks that made him entirely human. Eli learned mine, and somewhere in the middle of coffee orders, city walks, and accidental touches, we found a rhythm that was ours alone. One rainy afternoon, he caught my hand mid-stride, pulling me close under his umbrella. The rain soaked through, but neither of us cared. "We went past the agreement," he said with a crooked grin. "And I'm glad." I laughed, heart full, wet hair plastered to my forehead. "Me too," I admitted, because it was true. The city sprawled around us, chaotic and beautiful. And in that chaos, we discovered something steady, something unexpected, something real. By the time winter settled in for good, Eli and I had found our balancia love that was once pretend, now painfully, joyfully genuine. And for the first time in a long while, I believed in the kind of happiness that sneaks up on you, defies your plans, and refuses to be anything but true. The cafe became our little universe, our refuge. I'd watch him behind the counter, tossing beans into the grinder with practiced ease, and I couldn't stop smiling. And every time his eyes caught mine, lingering a second too long, I remembered that spilled latte, the absurd, messy beginning of a story that neither of us had expected. Yet both of us were desperate to continue. He leaned across the counter one morning, brushing fingers against mine. "Pretend me again?" he teased. I laughed, shaking my head. "No pretending this time." "Good," he said softly, eyes glinting. "Because I never want to let go." And I didn't. Not then, not ever. The days that followed the party were a delicate balance of excitement and anxiety. Each morning, I would wake up with the memory of Eli's hand in mine, lingering too vividly for comfort, or maybe not enough for my liking. Couldn't quite tell. It was strange how someone who had started as a stranger could claim so much space in my mind so quickly. I tried to focus on work, on the mundane routines of my life, but Eli's presence seeped into everything. Even when I avoided the cafe, I found myself walking past its warm amber glow, drawn by some invisible thread I couldn't resist. I caught glimpses of him behind the counter, greeting customers with that effortless charm. But the instant his eyes met mine, the world shifted. I was unmoored, floating somewhere between panic and desire. Finally, I decided I had to face it. One afternoon, I stepped into the cafe, heart hammering like a drum. Eli looked up from his espresso machine, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "You came back," he said, voice soft but teasing. "I had errands," I muttered, wishing my voice sounded less nervous than it felt. "Right?" he said, raising an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Errands that happened to involve staring at me?" I couldn't argue with that. He had a way of seeing through me, a way that made pretending impossible. The air between us seemed to crackle with energy as I approached the counter. He handed me a cup of coffee, fingers brushing mine in a deliberate, lingering touch. "1 caramel latte," he said. "On the house." I accepted it, hands trembling slightly, and muttered a thank you. He leaned on the counter, studying me. "You know, this can't just be one night anymore, can it?" I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his gaze. I don't think so." Eli's grin softened into something more intimate, a look that made my chest ache. "Good," he murmured, "because neither can I." Our relationship began cautiously, like tiptoeing through a minefield of emotions. We met for coffee more often, walked the city streets in the evenings, and discovered a rhythm that was both thrilling and terrifying. Every touch, every shared laugh, every lingering look blurred the lines between friendship, pretense, and something much deeper. One chilly evening, Eli invited me to his apartment under the guise of movie night. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the warmth that hit me when I stepped inside felt like a safe harbor. He had dimmed the lights, and the scent of cinnamon and coffee lingered in the air, wrapping around me like a soft blanket. We sat close on the couch, legs brushing, shoulders touching. He handed me a mug of hot chocolate, our fingers brushing in the simplest, most intimate gesture. The movie played in the background, but I barely noticed. All I could focus on was him, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, the way his lips twitched in a quiet smile. "I like this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "What? This? Us?" I said, glancing down at our hands resting near each other. "It feels real." Eli's eyes met mine, unguarded, full of something raw and undeniable. "It is real," he said. "Or at least it could be, if you let it." I wanted to argue, to remind him of boundaries, agreements, and the fragile constructs of our lives. But the warmth of his presence, the steady pulse of his hand near mine, made words fail me. Instead, I leaned closer, letting the silence speak volumes. The first time we kissed, it wasn't cinematic or planned. It was a quiet moment, fingers tangling, foreheads resting together as the city hummed softly outside his window. Eli's lips brushed against mine with a tentative gentleness that made my knees weak. And when I responded, it was as if every restraint I had clung to dissolved instantly. He pulled back slightly, just enough to look into my eyes. "You're amazing," he whispered, and my heart nearly stopped. I began, but words failed me again. He laughed softly, a sound that wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. "Shoo," he said, pressing his forehead to mine. No words needed. From that night on, our interactions carried a new intensity. Every touch, every glance, every accidental brush of our arms sent shivers down my spine. I realized how much I had craved this kind of connection, how much I had yearned for someone who could make the world feel both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. But it wasn't always easy. The intensity of our feelings brought insecurities to the surface. I worried about boundaries, about the fragility of this new bond. Eli, for all his charm, had his own fears, ghosts from his past that occasionally surfaced in quiet moments of doubt. One rainy afternoon, we found ourselves caught without an umbrella, running down the slick streets in a mixture of panic and laughter. By the time we reached the small shelter of a bookstore doorway, we were soaked, shivering, and breathless. "Great," I muttered, trying to wring out my jacket. Eli laughed, shaking raindrops from his hair. "You look ridiculous," he teased. "You're soaked too." I shot back, though I couldn't help laughing. He leaned close, brushing a wet strand of hair from my forehead. His hand lingered, warm and comforting against my skin. "You're beautiful when you're frustrated," he said softly, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared. I felt my chest tighten, the vulnerability of the moment pressing down on me. "I don't want to ruin this," I admitted, voice trembling. Eli cupped my face gently, his thumb brushing across my cheek. "You could never ruin this," he said. "Not if you don't want to. We're in this together." And in that moment, I believed him. As the weeks passed, Eli and I grew closer, navigating the ebb and flow of our feelings. We shared secrets, laughter, and quiet moments of intimacy that went beyond words. The city around us became a backdrop to our evolving story and narrative of two people discovering love in unexpected places. One evening, Eli surprised me with a picnic on the rooftop of his apartment building. He had spread a blanket, lit a few candles, and brought a small portable speaker playing soft jazz. The city lights stretched endlessly behind us, and for the first time, I felt like we were truly alone in the world. "I can't believe you did all this," I said, heart swelling with affection. He shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "I could say the same about you." I laughed, shaking my head. "Touché." We ate in comfortable silence for a while, occasionally stealing glances at each other, the unspoken connection thick in the air. Finally, Eli reached for my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. "I never thought that pretending could lead to this," he admitted, voice soft. "But I'm glad it did, because I can't imagine my life without you now." My chest tightened, eyes welling with emotions I had struggled to articulate. "I feel the same," I whispered. He smiled, leaning in to rest his forehead against mine. "Then let's stop pretending once and for all." I nodded, closing my eyes, savoring the warmth and closeness that had become my new normal. The challenges didn't disappear overnight. There were moments of doubt, arguments sparked by miscommunication, and the occasional pang of insecurity. But each time, we found our way back to each other, learning to navigate the complexities of love together. Eli had a way of grounding me, of reminding me that it was okay to be vulnerable, to let someone in completely. And I had a way of keeping him tethered, of showing him that he was seen, appreciated, and loved for exactly who he was. One winter evening, as we walked home through softly falling snow, Eli slipped his hand into mine, his warmth seeping through my gloves. "Do you remember that first night?" he asked, voice tinged with nostalgia. "The party?" I asked, smiling at the memory of chaos, laughter, and awkward pretense. He nodded. "I never expected this," he said, gesturing between us. "But I'm glad it happened." "Me too," I said, squeezing his hand. "Even if it started as a lie." He laughed softly, leaning close. "Not a lie," he said. "A beginning." Our bond deepened with each passing day, transforming from fragile pretense into something enduring, something real. We learned each other's rhythms, celebrated small victories, and found joy in shared routines. The city became our playground, the cafe our sanctuary, and each moment together a thread weaving a tapestry of connection, trust, and love. One evening, Eli invited me to join him behind the counter at the cafe after closing hours. The lights were dimmed, the shop empty, and the scent of coffee lingered like a comforting memory. He handed me a cup of espresso, eyes gleaming with mischief and tenderness. "Here's to us," he said, raising the cup. I clinked mine against his, feeling the weight and warmth of the moment. "To us," I echoed, and in that simple act, I realized how far we had come from a ridiculous, pretend arrangement to a love that was alive, resilient, and profoundly ours. The following weeks felt like walking through a dream I didn't want to wake from. Eli and I had settled into a rhythm, a comfortable closeness that made every morning worth facing and every night something to look forward to. We still teased, argued lightly, and occasionally irritated each other, but those moments only reminded me how real this connection had become. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I found myself wandering through the city, carrying a bag of groceries, when my phone buzzed. A message from Eli. "Meet me at the park? I have something to show you." Curiosity piqued. I made my way to the park, the winter sun casting long shadows across the snow-dusted paths. There he was, leaning casually against the railing of a small frozen pond, his scarf wrapped haphazardly around his neck, hair catching the sunlight in golden-brown strands. He waved, and I felt a smile spread across my face before I even reached him. "Hey!" I greeted, breath visible in the cold air. "Hey!" he replied, stepping closer. His eyes were serious, yet the familiar warmth was unmistakable. "I wanted to show you something. Something important." I tilted my head, curiosity, and nerves tangled together. Okay, what is it? He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small, hand-carved wooden box. My fingers tingled at the sight of it. Open it, he said softly, eyes never leaving mine. I lifted the lid and found a delicate silver necklace inside. A simple pendant shaped like a small coffee cup, our symbol, in a way, of how this story had begun. But the real surprise was the small note tucked beneath it, written in Eli's careful handwriting. For the moments we've shared and the ones yet to come. Stay with me. My chest tightened, emotions rising like a tide I couldn't hold back. Eli, I whispered, unable to finish. He stepped closer, tilting my chin up gently so our eyes met. I mean it, he said. The Susits not pretend anymore. I want to be with you. Always. Tears pricked my eyes, but I couldn't stop the laughter and sobs that tangled together. I want that too, I admitted, my voice breaking under the weight of my feelings. He smiled, slipping the necklace over my head, the cool silver resting against my chest. Good, he said, his fingers brushing against my collarbone in a tender, grounding gesture. Because I'm never letting go. We stood there for a long moment, the park silent except for the faint sound of winter wind and distant laughter. And in that silence, I realized how much I had changed, how much I had grown. From a reckless, chaotic start, we had built something lasting, fragile yet strong, and entirely ours. Over the next few months, life unfolded with a quiet joy that felt almost surreal. We explored the city together, sometimes aimlessly, sometimes with purpose, but always in tandem. Each cafe visit, each evening stroll, and even the mundane tasks of life became infused with intimacy and connection. Eli had a way of noticing the little things, the way I preferred my coffee, the subtle frown when I was stressed, the way I laughed at the silliest jokes. And I had begun to see the depths of him, the tenderness beneath his playful exterior, the thoughtfulness that colored every action, the warmth that seemed to radiate from him even in the coldest moments. One night, we found ourselves sprawled on his couch, the city lights casting a soft glow through the window. He rested his head on my chest, fingers tracing absent-minded patterns across my arm. You're incredible, he murmured, voice low and sleepy. Do you even realize that? I ran my hand through his hair, smiling softly. Not always, but I'm learning, I whispered. He shifted slightly, tilting his head to look at me. I love you, he said simply, and the words hit me like a tidal wave, simultaneously grounding and overwhelming. I love you too, I whispered back, pressing a gentle kiss to his temple. And in that moment, everything that had begun as a lie, a game, a pretense, felt entirely real. The city outside, the soft hum of life around us, it all faded into the background, leaving only the truth of us, of love found in the most unexpected of ways. The following winter, we celebrated our half-year anniversary. Eli had planned a small surprise, and when I arrived at his apartment, I found the space decorated with fairy lights, photographs of our adventures, and a small homemade cake. You didn't have to, I murmured, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness. I wanted to, he said with a grin, because every day with you has been special. I want us to celebrate that. We spent the evening laughing, reminiscing, and making quiet promises to each other. And when the night ended, and we stood by the window watching snowflakes drift lazily to the ground, Eli held me close. No matter what, he said softly, we face it together. Agreed. Agreed? I whispered, resting my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my ear. It was strange, how the pretend boyfriend we had once been had transformed into a real, steadfast presence. And yet, it felt natural, inevitable. Love had a way of sneaking up on you, of claiming every corner of your life without warning, and I had never been more grateful. Spring arrived, soft and tentative, and with it, a sense of renewal. Eli and I spent afternoons wandering the blooming parks, sharing ice cream cones, and laughing at the smallest things. Our relationship had become a rhythm, a comfort, and a thrill all at once. One day, as we walked along the river, the sun glinting off the water, Eli stopped, turning to face me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I've been thinking," he began, "about how this all started. A joke, a party, a fake arrangement. And now, look at us." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Yeah. Crazy. Crazy," he echoed. "But perfect. You're perfect. And I don't want to imagine my life without you." My chest tightened with emotion. "I don't want that either," I admitted, leaning in closer. Eli's lips met mine in a kiss that was soft, lingering, and filled with everything we had built together: the laughter, the vulnerability, the shared dreams, and quiet intimacy. It was a kiss that sealed promises, a kiss that spoke louder than words ever could. By summer, our love had become an unshakable presence in both our lives. Friends who had met us as a faux couple were now witnesses to something real, something enduring. We had become partners in the truest sense, supporting each other through challenges, celebrating successes, and finding joy in the simplest moments of togetherness. One evening, Eli suggested a night on the rooftop, just the two of us. Candles flickered, and the city sprawled endlessly beneath us. He held my hand, eyes glinting in the candlelight. "I never thought I'd find this," he said softly. "I never thought pretending could lead to. But I'm grateful every day that it did." I smiled, leaning my forehead against his. "Me too," I whispered. The stars stretched across the sky, and in that moment, it felt as if the universe itself was quieting down to watch us. The city hummed around us, but here, on the rooftop, it was just Eli and me, no pretense. No arrangements, only love. And I realized then that the journey from a spilled latte and a ridiculous agreement to this quiet, tender happiness had been worth every moment: the awkwardness, the tension, the growing pain of emotions I couldn't ignore, because it had led me to him. Eli brushed a strand of hair from my face, his fingers lingering, and whispered, "Stay with me?" I laughed softly, pressing my lips to his. "Always." The city lights shimmered behind us, and the winter that had once felt cold and distant now seemed warm and inviting, as if the universe itself had conspired to give us this love born from chaos, nurtured by patience, and sealed with trust. We stood there a long while, hands intertwined, hearts synchronized, knowing that whatever challenges awaited us, we would face them together. Because what had begun as a joke had become a story of connection, of growth, and of a love that was entirely, irrevocably ours. And for the first time in a long while, I felt entirely, undeniably at home. Our journey continued, simple and profound in its unfolding. Every glance, every touch, every laugh cemented the bond we had built from pretense into reality. Eli was no longer just a barista or a party favor. He was my partner, my anchor, and my heart. The world outside could continue in its chaos, but in his arms, I had found a place where I belonged. A love that had started unexpectedly, but now promised a lifetime. And in the quiet of the night, beneath the city lights, I whispered to myself and to him, "This is real. This is us. And I never want it any other way." Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.